Second citizenships are a modern concept. The modern passport has only been around for about 100 years. Second citizenships only became common in the last 50 years. Before the First World War, it was possible to travel the world without a passport. That was the normal state of affairs for most people. Early immigrants from Europe to the US didn't need any type of government identity document to enter. They simply declared their name at the border and were waved in. The predecessors to passports had existed much earlier. When someone had to travel through another country, he would take a letter from the monarch or foreign secretary requesting that he be permitted to travel through a particular country unimpeded. This evolved into the passports that we use nowadays. It's long forgotten today, but there was much opposition to the introduction of passports for travel. The predecessor to the United Nations, the League of Nations, held a passport conference in 1920. Part of the goal of that conference was to restore freedom of movement to where it was before the war. The conference concluded that security concerns prevented them from abolishing passports immediately. They said they hoped to do it in the future. Instead, they recommended that a standard form of passport be issued for 2 years to facilitate international travel. This is what led to modern passports. Further attempts were made to abolish passports in the 1920s. The International Conference of Emigration and Immigration held in Rome in 1924 stated that the necessity of obtaining passports should be abolished as soon as possible. In 1926, at a Geneva conference, it was demanded that all League of Nations members abolish the need for passports immediately. At the time, passports were still seen as a serious restriction on freedom. By the end of the 1920s, most governments had concluded that it was essential to issue passports for travel. They were seen as something that could help refugees after the war to stay in the countries they had fled to. After the Second World War, the United Nations returned to the issue of abolishing passports. They held a conference on passports and frontier formalities in 1947. At that conference, they considered abolishing passports. The delegates concluded that it was not possible to return to pre-1914 conditions of travel. As recently as 1963, the UN Conference on International Travel and Tourism recognized the desirability, from both an economic and social point, of progressively freer international travel. We now have a situation where a passport is essential for international travel. Travel by air without a passport is impossible. It's now accepted as a fact of life. The only way to travel internationally without a passport is to cross a border on foot or arrive by boat. Passports have become a tool used to control the population. The early objectors to passports recognized this. Today, removal of passports and thus your right to travel is used by governments to punish and force compliance with rules. The US will refuse to renew a passport if you have an outstanding tax debt of $50,000 or more. The UK restricts the use of passports by football fans who've misbehaved at matches. Passports are confiscated by courts in both civil and criminal cases. Passports are anti-freedom and a tool of control. The paradox is that the more passports you have from different countries, the more freedom you have. If your passport is cancelled by one country, simply use one of your other passports. For anyone who runs a business or has modest wealth, attacks on freedom are increasing exponentially. It's not difficult to imagine inadvertently running into difficulties with tax authorities or other regulators. Having a second passport is the ultimate insurance policy. It guarantees your freedom to travel no matter what happens. That's why anyone who values their freedom must seek out second citizenships. Would you like to increase your freedom in an increasingly volatile world? Are you concerned that your right to travel could be denied during the next crisis? Second Passport Blueprint will show you how to get a free second passport. A second citizenship is the ultimate tool for freedom, no matter where you're from. This report by international citizenship expert Henry Hill shares secret methods of how you can obtain the ultimate insurance policy, a second passport. With a second passport, you'll be able to travel freely, no matter what restrictions your government imposes. No more closed borders or applying for permission to leave your country. It has long been possible to buy citizenship in some countries if you're willing to spend $100,000 or more for the privilege. While this can be a good option for some, there are many little-known methods to get better passports without spending any money. With Second Passport Blueprint, you will discover 1 Caribbean citizenship you can get in 6 months. 1 Asian citizenship that's free and instant for citizens of Commonwealth countries. A little-known method to obtain fast citizenship in a large EU country. Another EU citizenship you can get for free without traveling to it or having ancestors from the country. The fastest Central American citizenship you can obtain. A top-rate South American citizenship you can get almost instantly. Follow the link in the description to get instant access to Second Passport Blueprint for less than the price of a good dinner.